Hey everybody, how you doing this afternoon? Welcome to my studio. My name is Michael Markowsky, and today we are going to be looking at paintings by some of my favorite artists, people just like you who've been painting along with me over the past, 4 months now? We started on September 15th, which is my birthday. That was our very first class, and here we are, the end of January 2021. So it's what a long, fantastic, incredible journey of growth and discovery. And I want to spend today just celebrating all of the incredible work that you guys have made. It is an honor and a pleasure to be able to look at this work. Every time I get a little notification on my phone, and my wife and I are just sitting on the couch and just like open it up like, wow, check this out. Look what people are doing. This is so crazy. It's so cool. Honestly, I'm just humbled, and my mind is boggled endlessly every time I see more work that people like yourself are out there just making stuff we've never, the vast majority of those of you in this class we've never met in person, just here through the web, because of these crazy circumstances in the world right now. And to be able to see so many people picking up painting for the first time, or coming to painting after a little while of a break. Maybe it was something people learned in school many years ago and now they're coming back to it, or people that are still really quite young but never really had a chance to get into art because of various different circumstances. So this is just, it's super cool. So let's dive right into it. Now again, I woke up today at like 9 o'clock in the morning, and I started going through all of these things thinking, okay, plenty of time, like 8 hours. I will be able to sort through all of this and get it all ready. Fast forward 8 hours later, and I'm still maybe a quarter of the way through getting all these images. So once again, I'm going to end up missing a bunch of paintings by some of you, but I'm going to do my best to get through as many of them as possible. And I have a few kind of ideas on how to make that happen. So it might not be as, I always want this to be nice and seamless and perfect, but it's just because of the sheer number of people that are participating in the class these days, it's a little tricky. So let's dive into this here. And so where we left off last class is we were looking at the Betty Goodwin artwork, her self-portrait, and then we started looking at the work that you guys have made. So maybe let's just, before we even kind of jumped right into that, I just want to mention again that there is this Facebook group that people like yourself, maybe, I'm sure probably most of you watching right now are already part of the group, but you never know. So this group is just for people who are taking the class. It's not a platform. I'm not selling anything. I'm not promoting anything. In fact, I'm probably not on there as much as I really should be. So what is fantastic is people who are in the class have sort of taken it over, made it their own thing. I mean, this is something that was suggested by someone in the class halfway through, and you guys are commenting on each other's paintings, and I love that support that has been developed through this community. So you could see people posting stuff right now, 14 minutes ago, 28 minutes ago. I mean, things are flooding in here. So, and subsequently, I'll also show you some images by people who are, at episode 10 right now. So part of me wonders what the best way to go about this is. Let's say I'm going to go right back to some of the early stuff here, because this is the Mary Pratt painting that we worked on way back in September. And this is actually this is version 2 that Peter sent in. because I think he said his mom took the first version, right? So he did another version of it. And I'd be kind of interested to know if any of you are making the same painting over again, not just the one you did last week, but if you went back, way back to the beginning and tried them again, how that process worked, repeating that, a painting with all of the skills and knowledge and ability that you have now, how that worked. Because this painting looks fantastic. I'm really pleased, Peter, how you went back and you did this one again. It just feels like, especially when we look at some of the shadows and stuff in here, that someone who's growing. And also, Peter, you've done a ton of stuff on your own here, which I'll show later on as well, which I'm super proud of you. So this is a painting by Sandy, and she's one of the newcomers to the class. And, you know, great job, Sandy. You know what I actually love is the way that you did the background here. That is super cool. Now, it's definitely different than, as you can see, the way that Peter did his and the way that I did mine. And I'm not sure exactly how you arrived to this, if it was deliberate or out of frustration, but I think it's really cool, a really interesting innovation to the painting. And of course, what is so cool is how each one of you guys interprets these classes and does your own thing with them. So, let me see. So I also want to show, because Sandy sent in a bunch, and some very sweet, generous compliments too. I really appreciate those, Sandy. So I just want to show here, because I don't think we'll go through every single thing that people who are just starting the class have done, but I think it is kind of neat just to go back, especially for those of us that have been at this for the past 4 months, to see people who are at the beginning of that journey and wonder where they'll end up. So here, this is again Sandy's paintings that, you know, I think this is probably the first 2 or 3 weeks, right? If anybody remembers the Suzanne Valadon painting, and the Hilma af Klint, and Henri Matisse, and the Mary Pratt painting, obviously. So it's cool to see them all side by side. One thing I love here, Sandy, is the way that you, with the Suzanne Valadon painting here, these big eyes on here, that's just so cool. They really glow. I can imagine when all the lights are off, and especially if you painted it with glow-in-the-dark paint, which exists. In fact, I've got, actually, well, this is printmaking ink for fabric, but it's, maybe, we'll in the kind of part 2 to this class that I'll talk about here. So this is printmaking ink. So you could use this on fabric, and I think you could use it on canvas, no problem. I wouldn't see. Oh, I haven't opened this one yet. But this might be something kind of fun for us to try later on and do a glow-in-the-dark painting. In fact, I've got a whole list of about a couple hundred artists that I want to talk about going forward, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself talking about that just yet. So here's, again, Sandy's setup here, working on these paintings. And I like this, using a bucket lid as your palette. Very smart. Whatever works, right? And a good big round piece of plastic. I prefer a round palette. I just find it always reminds me of the color wheel itself. And then here's the af Klint painting. I always get Gustav Klimt and Hilma af Klint mixed up just because there's one letter different in their last name. These are great. This one looks like it's still in process there. And then here's all of your, you know, what she was saying is like, you know, appreciating learning how to use and mix color, which obviously is such an important part of painting. We've just finished a painting last week, the Artemisia Gentileschi painting, which we began in black and white, or grisaille, and then we added color to. And I think I might even talk about that painting we might jump around in today's class because I have a lot of those that I managed to gather together. So that is super cool. I love seeing all of the lessons side by side. These charts and everything. Oh, and this is cool. I like this innovation there. It just starts to look like a really cool painting, this thing right here. I like that. Coolness. Okay. And then here's the Matisse and the Valadon side by side. Very cool. You know, it's funny. I think to myself, oh, I want to go back and I want to record some of those early videos. I feel like I could do them better. And then I see people who are going through the course and they're like, oh, maybe they're okay, because clearly hundreds of people have been following along and doing it. So maybe I'll just mess it up if I go back. Okay, so let's see. So do I want to, there is, again, I think there's so many paintings that I didn't get a chance to talk about over the last little while, and I've starred them thinking, like, should we go back and talk about the Mary Cassatt painting and the Alex Katz painting and the David Hockney paintings that I missed? Some of them are so beautiful. Like, I mean, here's, okay, I'm gonna just show, because I didn't show these here before. Here's, I'm not sure what Gemini Nails here, because we've got a few of your artwork here. So here's the David Hockneys. Look at how beautiful. I love that you framed it too. And you did a much better job here on this little fellow than I did on mine. And then here's Sharon's version. I don't think I showed these last week as well, or last time we gathered here. I love this little gray shadow in behind here. Beautiful. That one was a fun one. I love dogs personally. I'm a huge dog fan, so seeing those together is super cool. Okay. Oh, I feel like we should just move forward, because where were we? There's so many that. Okay. I'll just kind of where we left off. I don't think I showed these. Here's Laura's painting of the Betty Goodwin. Wow, I love this color, that purple in the face and the blue. What I think was really nice about doing the Betty Goodwin painting is it was already a slightly distorted, abstracted face. It was simplified in many ways, so it really gave us permission to be a little bit wilder with our colors. And like, this is a very expressive painting here. I'm really excited with this one, Laura. I love all of the brush strokes in the face. Really cool. And those big eyes, these big eyelashes. And here's Charmai's version of the same painting. Wow, like, I mean, totally. And then here's Vanya's version of the painting, right? 3 totally different paintings, but they're all super cool in their own way. You know, here we see a little bit more of the warm brown, reddish, earthy color that was in behind, and we see these drips on the face. Whereas we still see the drips here, but they've been kind of covered over with a few more layers. And then Laura's here. They're almost gone. There might be a little bit of it underneath here. But, you know, what I think is fun about when we start learning these techniques, you can, like, really amplify them, or you can disguise them, you can get rid of them altogether, or you can make a whole painting just featuring them and make a totally abstract painting with those techniques. Super cool. You know, love these. These are great. You know, and you know, it's funny when we talk about like portraits, people get really worked up about trying to get it to look right. And what I think about, I mean, this is not just portraits, but everything else, but the more that you know, there is a time and a place for trying to do things to create this exact likeness, but I think that often people get so worked up about making it right that they miss some of those, the exit ramps to something new and incredible and awesome, right? You're just like so focused on getting from point A to point B that we forget that there's all these really cool directions that we can go off on all these and sometimes you end up going off on those tangents anyway, no matter what. And I think a big part of being an artist is learning to really embrace those happy accidents. And when you go off the freeway and into a direction you weren't expecting, a big part of it is learning to kind of just take a second and go like, okay, this is not where I wanted to go, but I'm liking where I am right now, right? I feel like that was something Dr. Phil would say. You know, like this face right here is, there's well, in all of them, there's a distortion to them, right? This one might be a little bit longer. This one is a little bit shorter here. And then this one, the eyes are kind of moving outward. And each of them are different and really cool in their own way. And that is where we start seeing each one of you's individual ways of expressing yourself. I think it's just super cool, seeing each other's styles really starting to develop here. Okay, so let's move on to Chagall here. So this will be kind of, we haven't looked at any of these paintings yet. And again, there's going to be about 10 or so that I haven't managed to get in here. And maybe we'll scroll quickly through the Facebook page and see if I can find any ones that we've missed out on. So here, this is Deborah's version of the Chagall painting. Wow. Look at that. Love the way that you painted this, the vase of flowers here. And the figure down here, so, you know, to be honest, I can't even quite, mine is, well, you know, I don't even show, mine, you've seen mine, you saw me painting mine for like 3 hours, so I'm not even going to bring it out and compare and contrast. I like just looking at your guys' paintings here. Even though I've got a big, you know, you've seen my bin full of the paintings there, and I've been putting a little bit of parchment paper in between each painting so they don't stick, which is something I'd highly recommend. Because if you've got a whole bunch of these paintings, they start stacking up, don't they? Okay, so this I really like this. But let's look at some of the other ones in comparison here. Wow, Dolores, this is cool. I think. Oh, so this is version 1, and then version 2 with just a little bit of outlining. You can see the difference, right? And I don't know if there was too much color. Maybe a little bit of extra blue, it looks like, in there. But otherwise, these are pretty similar paintings. The only difference is a little bit of outlining. You can really see how putting those outlines in there all of a sudden ties it all together again, right? Because right now it sort of looks, I mean, I actually quite like that as it is right there. But there's a special, and you know, down here is totally fine. Even up in the sky, kind of keeping it slightly, you know, ambiguous as to what is happening in the sky. But the flowers here feel definitely unfinished. And then boom, we add some of this line work over top of it, and it snaps together instantly. Right, really beautiful. Right, and again, quite different, much darker. This one's much darker, right? And again, you can see how helpful just these little tiny dashes of black in there start to kind of give our eyes, it sort of defines different shapes for one another. Not completely, but it suggests them, right? Wow, totally different approaches. Okay, and here's Iris's version of the painting. Wow, look at these flowers up here. Wow, you really spent some time in here developing, I don't know what kind, I don't know anything about flowers, except that I seem to have an amazing ability to make them wilt very quickly. But I love these white flowers up there. Very cool. And then your figure down here. She really, seems to be sort of glowing. The way that you painted it here, see how there's this, if we just zoom in a bit, this little outline where you haven't gone right up to the figure. And, you know, sometimes people do that out of, you know, just maybe fear because they don't want to overlap or make a mistake or paint over the line. But what ends up happening is it creates this sort of glowing look because there's this little bit of, not white, but like a light blue. I think it was like the first wash we put down on there. And so it makes her seem like she's radiating light, and that like there's, again, that kind of aura or halo around her that, you know, is different than the way Dolores painted this here. So she's painted right up to the figure, Deborah as well. So right, in fact, Deborah's is the opposite. We have this darker outline, really kind of black around the edges, right? And they're totally different, right? I could read different things into them. Like that darker outline to me somehow makes it look like she's I feel more of a sleepy quality with her. I really feel like that the darker outline sort of makes it look like she's non-active, right? That it's a very quiet, it's slowing down things, versus, or even let's say the blue has a similar kind of effect, right? But this outline, to me, it almost looks like her eyes are open here too, right? So it makes it look like there's this vibrating energy, that aura around her, right? So you can, and Matisse was one of those artists who really used that technique of kind of almost like a bit of an unfinished quality, leaving space between. So if there's like, if this is a line, rather than painting paint right up to the lines so that they overlap and create a seamless kind of puzzle piece, right? And everything looks like the illusion of you know, unified composition. He would, let's say if this is again a line, he would paint like kind of up to here and then kind of up to here. So you have this kind of, again, this halo effect that Iris has. And that creates a little bit of radiating energy, especially if you use washes underneath to amplify that. So great job. Okay, we have May's version of the painting here. Wow, cool. That looks great. You know, one thing here is I had very little, or if any, black outlines in here, right? So much less defined. We have these blue outlines here, but what, again, I think without those black lines, kind of locking down the composition and defining things become a little bit more airy, right? In the same way that irises had that kind of aura effect, right? So there's this one, in fact, if anything, emphasizes the kind of the dreamy-ish kind of quality in the painting. Great flowers too. And I always find with May, your paintings there's a spontaneity and a speed to the way that you apply the paint, which is like, we can feel that when we look at it, and I really enjoy that. Wow, and Molly's, look at this, cool. Sorry, I zoomed in a little too close there, but wow, I love this combination of colors. I think it's also influenced by this kind of orange board that is in behind there. It actually kind of works really well. It gives a great warmth to this picture. So if you're thinking about framing it, I could see kind of a natural wood, like a pine frame, working really well for this painting. The way that you've painted this is just, it's like delicious, right? These contrasting colors, we got green, or maybe like greenish yellow over purple, which are opposing colors on the color wheel. So they create that vibration, right? That's one of the things the Impressionists really did, is, you know, painting a red next to a blue, right? You know, it's the same way that 3D glasses work, right? They create this kind of effect in our eyes, or inside of our brain, really. Beautiful application of paint down here, really nice. This is just gorgeous. I really like what's going on, especially down here, and the way that you've painted the flowers too. Certainly way more carefully than I did mine. So those small brushstrokes are really effective. That's great. Then we have Peter's version of the painting. Cool. Like, look at all these little... So this, you know, again, just the slight difference in the way that you're putting those brushstrokes down changes the, you know, even just the kind of plant that's in this vase, or flowers that are in this vase. Right? This one has a little bit more of a prickly quality. Right? It feels more like... I get like a, you know, like a Christmas wreath kind of quality, you know, like, what is that, holly, right? The way that it's kind of painted, which is, there's nothing wrong with it. I just think it's, what is so cool is how different they are. And then we really feel this dragon leaping out of the sky here. And these very fast brush strokes down there. Well done, Peter. Very cool. Oh, we got lots more. Okay, so I'm gonna... Wow, Sharon, cool. So the figure down here, much less defined, which is actually, I think, one of the aspects of this painting that you know, when we look at the painting, the first thing we see is the bright colors of the flowers in the vase, and then we might see the, you know, this radiating reddish sun. And then we might see some kind of weird form. Like, what is that, a dragon? That's nonsense. That's crazy, right? And then you're like, okay, well, whatever. I don't understand what's going on. And then you're like, oh, there's a person in the grass, right? So I think that the intent of the artist is to use different colors and shades, tones, tints to then also to storytell, right? So that our eyes move to one part, and then move to another part, and then move to another part, like we'd read a page in a book, right? And the painting starts to like unveil itself, or reveal itself, or tell its story to us based on the way that we can use light and dark and different colors to do that, right? So I could see if people are walking through an art gallery really fast, they may not even see the figure in the bottom until they come back and they're rewarded by seeing a little bit more, right? Which is one of the fun things if you go to, particularly like Europe, you go to the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, which is one of the great, like, top 5 museums in the entire world. In Florence, the Uffizi has like a couple of the most famous Botticelli paintings, The Birth of Venus. You've seen that woman kind of standing in the clamshell. And some Michelangelo paintings, and I mean, a whole bunch of really great paintings. But when I was there, or I've been there, was it just the one time? That museum, especially because the paintings are really sensitive. They're older paintings from the Renaissance, 500-600 years ago. Most of the artwork is lit with natural light, and the effect of that is that a lot of the paintings are a little bit dark, especially if there's clouds passing over. And so you have the guidebook, and you're looking at your guidebook, and then you look at the painting, and you're like, oh, well, I think the guidebook is better because everything's well illuminated. And then you think about, that's obviously the guidebook is not how people saw this painting. They saw it on the wall, mostly lit by the sun or by candles, right? 500-600 years ago. And part of it is you just sort of look at it, and as you're looking at it, your eyes start to adjust to the darker parts of the painting, and you realize that the lighter parts are the things you see first, and they're like the first sentence of a novel, right? And then some of the darkest parts in the shadows are like the last sentence at the very end of the novel, right? They're not intended for you to see them all at once. They're rewarding people who are going to spend, you know, an extra 5-10 minutes just staring at a painting, which can feel a little bit funny if you've ever been to a museum and you're just standing there looking at a painting for like 5-10 minutes, but it rewards you. Great paintings will reward that attention you give them. Wow, look at this. Shelley, cool, right? So, I mean, you know, this tree, I think this is probably the best version of this tree that I saw anybody paint. In fact, one thing I like about this is there is a little bit of outlining. We see a little bit of kind of small blue lines in here. But there's for the most part, a great softness to the way that you've painted it. It reminds me a bit of like Renoir, who, not just Renoir, but who am I thinking of? Rubens, who's an artist from like the 1600s. And Rubens was very famous for these very soft kind of modeling of the figures. And here we really feel this softness. Like you could see a lot of other people really outlined the vase and these flowers and the tree, whereas you've made a decision to have, yeah, I don't know how to describe, like a softness, the blending of forms from one to the other. There's less distinctness in between some of these shapes, and I actually really like the way. I know it's funny. You're like, what is that? But when I did mine, this one sort of looked like this giant cocoon form that was right there, rather than a tree. That's really nice. Okay, wow, look at this, Susan. Wow, that's cool. I love the way. So this figure down here is, you know, very simplified, right? And in being simplified, it doesn't leap out to us as much, right? So it's kind of, again, we're probably drawn more up here first, and then we come down, and it's kind of more integrated into the rest of the composition. Beautiful job. Okay, so I'm really excited with the Chagall paintings. Those, I mean, so it's such a playful painting. He was a playful painter, and so it's really cool to see you guys all playing with that painting. Now, what I've done here, these are just all of the images, and I was going to see, I guess I got to go even further back to see if there's paintings of Chagall that have I not talked about here. Okay, I can't open it that way. So I thought I could just kind of jump in here. Oh, it's not going to let me do that, because if I do that, then I'm going to lose my place in here, I think. Let's see. We've seen that one. Seen Shelley's. Let's make sure I try to capture everybody who's working on this painting. Did we talk about Dolores? Yes, we did. And oh, that's the one before the outlines and Deborah's. Okay. So just before I move on, is there another Chagall hiding up here somewhere? Look at all these paintings. This is so cool. Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay, like, wow, it just goes on and on and on and on and on. Okay, so I think we can move on from Chagall. All right. Okay, now let's talk about Renoir. Okay. So, this one was one that, though I think the results were fantastic. I did notice some people commenting that they were having some trouble with the hands primarily. A lot of people said that was a trouble. In fact, some people omitted the hands because they weren't happy with the way they turned out, which is totally fine, right? You don't have to, you can, whatever, if there's parts of it, that's what's so fun about making a painting, that if there's a tree or something in a painting and you're like, driving me nuts, it's like, just paint it out, disappears. Put a building in its place, put another person there, you know, splatter some paint there, right? You never know until you actually do it, right? And if you've been able to do it once, you can do it again a second time, and the chances are 99.9% of the time, the second time you make that painting, it's going to be better. It's just, I mean, it's possible that I've had this in my own art career. There's certainly been times where I've made a painting and been like, wow, I don't even know how I did that. And then I try doing it again and I don't quite do it the same way again. but I end up creating something different. And then again, it's like another detour off an off ramp that I can take and be like, whoa, this is, I don't know where I am, but I like it. Right? So, okay, Deborah, let's take a look here. Oops. This is beautiful. I love, again, the softness of some of this stuff in the background is working really nice. Like, because I don't know what this shape was behind her. I think it's supposed to be a window, but that blending that in, what it reminds me a little bit about is shallow depth of field in photography, right? And there's a whole photography course I taught on YouTube, just like this one that I did way back in March and April. So if you want to learn how to use your camera, you can watch those. It's all free. But the simplest explanation for shallow depth of field, or the bokeh effect, is, let's say, is kind of a little bit like the background behind me, right? You see how you can see my face, and hopefully it's still in sharp focus, but things in behind me, like there's a baseball hat on top of an acetone container, and you can't read that label, right? The background is out of focus. And so in the same sort of way here, the background being a little bit out of focus is, you know, a strategy that photographers use to isolate the figure from a busy background, right? You know, it's something that if you look at most paintings pre-photography, there was no concept of a blurry background, because that's not how our eyes work, right? If I'm painting a vase of flowers and it's kind of in front of me, and I paint that and I go, okay, now I'm going to paint the background. I just look at the background, and now the background with my eyes is in focus, right? So most paintings prior to like the 1850, everything was in focus, because that's how our eyes work. But after 1850, 1837 or whenever the early, there's dispute as to like photography and its origins, but once that happened, as David Hockney would say, once we've seen how a camera sees the world, there's no going back. We start seeing the world that way ourselves, even if we don't have a camera. So that blurry background, anyway, long story short, I think it's really nice. And the look on her face, I really feel like she's really reading. I can feel like she is about, halfway through the first paragraph on this page, page 136, right? The way that she's looking right there, right? She's just finishing this sentence. Great job. And again, these fingers aren't super well defined. I didn't do super well defined fingers, but it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me one iota at all. I think it's a great painting. I think one thing I would say is we have lost a little bit of the shape of her arm or elbow coming down here, and maybe part of like her belly would be about here. But again, you've sort of blurred that out. And is it really important for us to see that? Not really. And again, that would be the way photographers do. They might blur out some of that stuff on the edges to keep our focus on the face. Wow, Irene here, very cool. I think Irene, maybe it was you who was talking about having deleted the hand because you weren't happy with it. So we can see that. I think it works totally fine without it. We could imagine her hand being underneath here, just off of screen or off of canvas, holding the bottom of the book. And here it looks like your reader is somewhere down at the very bottom of this page. All right, they're reading the slightly different reading speeds. These two readers, because this book is La Liseuse, the reader. This is great. I think you've captured like the feeling in here. Again, the hand is maybe a little bit awkward, perhaps, in that it's just physically kind of, I think, I could almost see it as that her other hand wrapping around on there. One thing I would suggest potentially is just maybe darkening it so that it de-emphasizes itself. Like if you're having a struggle like drawing, you know, with the hand drawing it out or whatever, painting it much darker so that it goes into the shadows is one way to de-emphasize it, and so that you're not because it, you know, artists like Renoir and artists of this period of time, especially even up to today, aren't particularly concerned with like the anatomy being perfect. If we understand what is happening in the painting, for many artists that's enough, and anatomy, all that, you know, is kind of an afterthought. So I think it's great. I like it as it is. Ooh, cool. Iris, nice job. Wow, this is great. I love this hand here, this finger up here. Great job. And again, I think Iris and Irene, your readers are about on the same page. That's great. I don't have much to say about this. This is really well done. These lips are really nice. That's fantastic. Cool. And this background, really well done. Nice soft background again. Man. Wow. That's cool. I love these fingers. That is cool. That's a beautiful hand. Beautiful. Right? And very different than everybody else's, right? Like the way that you've done her face, I quite like this color on the nose, right? It helps that nose pop forward, right? Because it is the part of our face that protrudes most from our face, so it's usually going to catch the most amount of light. Like most of the time we're going to get highlights on our nose, maybe our eyebrows, tops of our cheeks, our lip and chin, right, is often where we're going to get most of the light. And this is a discussion for something else, but the color can also change slightly as we go down the face. Really cool. I like that a lot. This is really nice. These are great, you guys. My goodness. Okay, wow. Okay, I'm gonna speed up here. Molly's version. Wow. So different. So, you know, this one now feels like a different person, a different personality, right? When I look at her, she feels like this reminds me of teachers I had when I was in elementary school, right? She's a little bit like, we feel like her posture, right? Rather than kind of being reading down here, she's standing up in front of the class and reading, right? Which is super interesting. Whether we intend to do these things or not, again, if you do it, and then I love making a painting and just sort of afterwards I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. Oh, interesting how these sort of decisions that I'm making unconsciously change the painting, give it a different kind of spin or meaning. Really nice. Again, beautiful face. What's nice down here is I think more than any of them feel the light reflecting from the book back onto her face. It almost makes it look like the book is illuminated, right? That it's glowing onto her face like an iPad or smartphone or something, right? Great painting. Whoa, and Ramon. Wow. This, you know, the way that you've painted it here, this reminds me a lot of Edvard Munch, the Scream, the artist who did the Scream, right? The way these hands definitely have a Munch quality. Beautiful, and really nice brush strokes here in the face. This red or the pink on the cheeks. Really nice. And again, so these fingers, and like we've seen, like even Rembrandt's original painting has a little bit of like Dr. Seussy kind of quality in those fingers, right? And it doesn't matter if they look kind of perfect or like realistic fingers. Renoirs themselves didn't. I think this is great. Really nice. Great job, Ramon. Yeah, this is definitely, you nailed the kind of the way the Impressionists painted here. There's, ooh. And now, I mean, this is that's sort of Charmai's painting here. That's, you can almost imagine her saying that. Ooh, she's reading 50 Shades of Grey or something there. Oh, that's, ooh. But what's nice here, so this is what I was talking about earlier, is having the hands get a little bit darker, as we would kind of expect them to be behind the book. If the book is really glowing and illuminating the face, then the hands are probably going to get a little bit less light. So it's a great way of especially if you're having a little bit of trouble on things, right? Just making them a little bit darker. Put them in shadow, and it solves a lot of problems. Okay, that's great. Look on her face. I love that. That's super cool. And here's Sharon's. Ooh, interesting. Look at all of the texture you got on the face. Now, I don't know if that was, I don't see that much texture built up elsewhere. So sometimes what happens, we're working on a painting, and often we see this with faces and hands and feet the most, is they're not turning out the way we want. So then we start kind of fiddling on that area, and the texture starts to build up in ways that it's not building up elsewhere. And that can be kind of a giveaway to like it kind of draws our attention, like, because we see that the difference in the texture. Now, is it a problem or not? It's totally up to you as the artist to decide. I don't mind it. I think you know, there's two ways of thinking about this. One way of thinking about faces, or really painting in general, is creating a totally unified surface where everything is treated in the same way, like a photograph, right? When you get a photograph, you take a photograph and you get it printed, we expect the whole surface of the photograph to be exactly the same. Like, it would be, you'd ask for your money back if you got that photograph and there was like some, you know, bumpy texture on one part of it, some part was wrinkled, some part was really shiny, and some part was really matte. You'd be like, what's the deal here, buddy? Like, there's obviously you got to check your machine because it's spitting out bad prints. So there's a whole group of, like, I would say the majority of artists, even painters, want that very unified surface where everything, in fact, that's often why artists will varnish a canvas, is to get like a smooth, like glass-like surface over top of the painting. Other painters will put a piece of glass over the top, which kind of acts like a varnish. It protects the painting, which is the maybe most obvious use of a varnish, is to protect it from like stains or dirt or dust and all those kind of things, because you can, with a proper, if it's varnished properly, you can remove the varnish. So sometimes you hear about this with like curators. When they're restoring a painting, they remove the varnish and then they can go and add pigments where it's needed. However, so the opposite side of all of those things is building up different textures and using different materials and mediums in the painting so you don't have a unified surface, or that the surface is not treated the same way throughout. And so doing that, it does bring our attention more to the differences, right? Because our eyes are conditioned to look for the differences in things out of necessity, so that we can see a lion moving through the jungle, right? So we can see, oh, that's not just another leaf over there, that's somebody who's going to eat me, right? So I think it's fine. Oh, whoa. One thing it does look like here, I would bring a little bit more of this kind of cooler light maybe up under her eyes a little bit more. I think that would help a little bit. but otherwise, fantastic. Great painting. And the background, really well done too. Wow. Again, totally different painting. So, right, she's, I think she's sort of about halfway down this page as she's looking here. Like, look at how soft this background is. As a photographer, you'd say like, wow, you got some really great bokeh here, because it's super soft. It's totally indistinct as to what's happening in the background. And her face, her hair, everything is treated very softly, which makes her eyes and her lips pop, because they're sharper lines, right? They're distinct. So you have all this softness, and then pow, 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 right? These lines that pop right off, right? So the first thing I don't know, I can't speak for everybody. The first thing I do when I look at this, I'm drawn immediately to her eyes, right? And then down onto her lips, and then into the book, which works really well, because then we're like, there's sort of this natural kind of ping pong between the two. Really nice. And this is the same one. I'm not sure what the difference is there. Whoa. Okay. Now we're talking. That's cool. Well done, Sue. Right, so she's just turned the page. I don't know if she's ahead or a little bit behind everybody else, but you can feel like she's kind of looking around here at this page. Very nice. There's a nice speed to the way these brushes are painted. You know, that's another thing to think about, is we haven't really talked about like painting in my drawing class, which again, there's a whole 40 episodes drawing class that I did back at the same time I was doing my photography class. We talked a lot about the speed of mark making and how drawing a line slowly or quickly creates a different kind of effect. All right, and we see this also in painting, right? Some people have a very slow, meticulous way of painting, and then other people are just like painting in really quickly, and it creates a different type of mark making, which also changes the way that we look at and interpret the painting. Beautiful. So this is what I was just talking here about, that light on kind of the tops of her eyelids, right, in the eye cavity, right, because that light is reflecting back up onto her chin and her eyes up here. So that's really effective. Great job. These are beautiful. Whoa, and Susan, this is great. This is so different. Everything is so different. Oh, no, I want to stay here for a second. Okay, I should start moving a little bit faster, but I love looking at these. Great. I think these lines on the face are a little bit intense. This reminds me a little bit more of Matisse, who comes about 20-30 years after Renoir. So Matisse would be very happy painting a painting like this. I think we would just expect just like an in-between value between this bright color and this a little bit darker peachy color. But I mean, I'm just nitpicky here, but I think it looks great. You've got all of the reflections in the right places. Beautiful. Whoa, look at that. I don't think it was probably as yellow. Let me see, I think you got two. I'm not sure. One is just different color of the lighting, right? I don't see any difference in the way it was painted. Let me see. I think this one, it's kind of hard to tell. I'll just look at this one here. But there is like a nice glow, this kind of yellow that I think is in all of them, right? We really feel the intensity of light coming off of this book and illuminating her face. I actually quite like some of these fast brush strokes, like the green here, some of these grays that you've used to outline the face. Again, there's a speed in the way that it's painted that is really satisfying. Okay, let's just take a quick look here. Was there any of these that I missed on the Facebook group? It looks like I think I got them all. Again, my apologies if I'm skipping over some people here. So let's now look at Bridget Riley. I don't think as many people did the Bridget Riley one, which is fine. I don't mind if people are, do the class a la carte. This is, so here's Deborah's version of the painting. And what I think is kind of cool is the alternating lines that are kind of crisscrossing as opposed to all kind of going in one direction, which is fine. In fact, if anything, I was gonna say, oh, that must have taken extra time to do that, but that's what I think most people would think, especially when you just start to understand this process, but then you're like, oh, well, actually, it's just the same amount of tape, because this would have been taped. Very cool. I think you got great lines. You got, there's a few little tiny places where the paint seeped out, or a little bit where there was no paint in between here. And I did the same thing when I did mine, right? There's a few little gaps. And I've had that painting upstairs in our living room next to our television since we made this painting back in December or January. Who knows how long ago this one was. And I've actually come to really like those little areas. Like, there's something about when an artwork is too perfect, and I'm not the only first person to write or think about this, but it doesn't allow, it becomes like inhuman, right? It loses the human quality. Like, there's nothing, and somebody say, well, that perfection is godliness, and to make a perfect painting is like, honors God or whatever God that you may or may not believe in. And so there's certain people striving for like a perfection. Like, if you can make a perfect painting, then you're like, there's like, this godliness to it. I don't know how else to describe it. Versus I'm a little bit more on the end of the so-called mistakes, like Bob Ross's happy accidents, are in some ways kind of a little bit of gifts to the audience. That, if something is just absolutely perfect, you're just like, wow, that is great, but it's like, it makes me feel kind of bad about myself because look how far away from perfection I am, right? Whereas there's something kind of, those little tiny imperfections in paintings, and there is within, like, I remember when I was in art school, I had a teacher who would talk about having little parts of paintings that are just not quite perfect. It's sort of just like leaving a little door open for those of us that aren't perfect. Kind of like, it's like a little bit of a relief, like, oh, a human being just like me made this painting, right? It's like People magazine, when they show like celebrities, they're just like us. They go to the grocery store, kind of thing, right? They're not like these omnipotent beings who flew down from the clouds to make Mission Impossible movie or something. I don't know. Okay, so here's Irene's. This is cool. Great job with the taping. Nice, right? I mean, especially for those of us who are using this technique for the first time. I was just replying to a few different emails this morning, people saying, I made it, I don't know why my painting didn't turn out so. It's like, well, if this is the first time you've ever used this technique, then we shouldn't even expect it to be perfect. And like I said, sometimes those little imperfections actually improve the painting. It's hard to really think about it, but in that way, but I really do believe that. Great. In fact, I like these areas where the color isn't totally solid, that we have a little bit of the color in behind kind of coming through. Very cool. Well done, Irene. And here's May's version. Wow. Well, this is cool. So there's the way that you painted it is with a lot of texture. So we see all of these brush strokes. And what's kind of fun about using tape and texture is you have like this texture is kind of coming and then it goes like, it just ends, right? And so that really emphasizes the that there was some sort of process, because there would be no way whatsoever, because sometimes people will paint this kind of hard edge style without any tape and just do it very carefully with a brush. But there's no way that you could make a painting like this and get these same lines without tape, right? It'd just be, I mean, I'm sure you could spend hundreds of hours to simulate that effect, but it would be nuts, right? Great job, May. And I was about to say Molly because our next artist here is Molly. Wow. I love, again, these undercolors kind of coming through, I think is really nice. I can see some people not wanting it, and obviously it's just a matter of just putting an extra little bit more tape and hiding them. I personally just think it's really cool. It makes it, for if anything, have more of a weaving texture, because we see that same sort of line kind of coming through over and over again. And it's nice that you did 2 versions of it. I always think when you're doing a process like this, having 2, 3, 5, 10 of them on the go is really helpful, because you're not just painting one and be like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go watch some Law and Order episodes or something right now, because this is going to take a couple hours for this to dry. You can just be like, okay, well, that one's done, and I got still this paint. I'm going to paint it here and here, and by the end, you've got a whole bunch done. Here's Charmaine's version of the painting. Oh, this is a square canvas too. So I think Charmaine, I was talking about, like, because she wasn't happy with a little bit of the tape and was wondering if maybe their paint was too thin, maybe getting under. And I suggested it might just be the burnishing of the tape. And like, so when you put the tape down, it's just rubbing your fingernail over the edge of the tape to help it adhere to the canvas as much as possible, so that, because that way the medium that you put over top doesn't have to be so thick. You're not relying on it to do all the heavy work. I've done this process without having any medium at all. You do get more bleeding, but maybe not. If you're burnishing down, you'd be surprised at how well the tape actually works. I mean, that's what it's for, right? For painters painting houses, and you lay down that tape and you get a nice sharp edge, like on your molding or ceiling or whatever, or windows. But the difference is the canvas has a lot more texture, and that's how, you know, unlike a wall, which is usually quite like smooth and flat, you can put that tape down and just walk away, paint over it, and you're fine. The reason you want to burnish or put that medium is to help really create a nice seal over that textured surface. Okay. Oh, I think this is, wow, whoa, crazy. This is interesting. So I like how you really played here, Sharon, with the way that you layered these lines and then going over top. And then is this a totally different one? I'm not sure. It's hard to tell if this is just in process or not. I mean, one fun thing with painting like this is you could take a painting that you're not happy with. You take your Betty Goodwin painting, your Mary Pratt painting, your Matisse painting, if you're not happy with it, and you could put tape over it and you could obliterate the entire painting or keep little bits of it. You know, after you peel the paint off, like, your intention might be, I'm just going to paint over it. But like, this is what I would suggest people do. Like, if you've got canvases and you're like, I don't like it, rather than just painting it white and putting a new painting over top of it, is to think about how you could experiment on it And then, because you're like, oh, I'm not happy with painting anyway, so then the stakes are, there's no way, if you're unhappy with the painting, there's no way you're going to mess it up any more than it already is if you start playing with different techniques over top of it, right? So, I'm really pleased that you tried a few different things. Like there's something really neat about this. Right, because we really feel these different kind of layers, like this kind of red, I guess, and then it turns blue and green. That feels definitely in behind these peachy orange stripes, and then these black ones feel much more on top of that, versus, let's say, May's painting or Irene's painting. Everything here is on the same level, right? We don't, I mean, you in terms of color and warm and cool colors, some things may be kind of receding and advancing a bit, but essentially they're all on the same surface, right? Then when we come down to your painting here, Sharon, or even this one, we do feel like layers on top of one another, like you're looking down from like a fire escape through, on the back of an apartment building, and you see all of the different metal kind of going down below. Okay, so let's just take a quick look. Have I missed any of the Bridget Riley paintings in here? Oh, whose is this here? Oh, is this is Iris's. This looks like a slightly different one. Very cool. Huh. And Estera Terraces. This piece of art looks quite hard to do. I didn't try to paint it yet, but it reminds me of math and geometry. It's funny. I mean, they do take different parts of the brain to execute a painting like that. And the reason why I'm showing you guys all these different techniques, all these different artists, is I think it's really helpful to explore those different techniques and realize that there's some that that come much easier to you than others, and that what comes easy to you might be really difficult for somebody else. And I think, when people first start, when they take an art class like this, I think, okay, what I want to do is I want to be able to paint like the Mona Lisa. Eventually, that's like my goal. I want to paint something that looks super realistic. And then you start exploring and you try a bunch of different things, and then you realize, like, okay, maybe my goals have kind of shifted now that I see different things that are working out easier for me, right? That just seem to suit my my level of patience is a big one, or my I mean, I think I've demonstrated that we can do virtually all of these paintings with the basic supplies that we began with. It does kind of help to have some medium or Mod Podge or slow dry medium or glazing fluid. Those do help, especially when we're getting a little more complex paintings. But I think it's helpful, but those things cost a little bit more money, right? So if you really don't want to invest in that, then money can be a factor that you might take into consideration as to like what kinds of paintings you want to be able to do, right? So if you're skimping on money, you're probably not going to want to do a painting that involves really thick layers of paint, because it's like, whoa, that's a whole tube of paint on that one painting, right? So I think some people might start the class thinking, this is what I want to do this, as that's my goal. And then as you learn a few different things, you're like, oh, you know what, I don't think I'm really into the tape painting thing. I never thought I would be interested in abstract art until I started doing it. And then I realized, like, I can shut, personally, when I think of like abstract painting, what I like about it, and let's say this Bridget Riley painting, is it allows me to kind of shut my brain off a little bit. Same thing with the Murakami, and we're rubbing the paper off. It's like, you could easily be sitting there, and at like 2 in the morning, you've got a beer, and you're watching a hockey game or something, and you're just like half awake, doing it, and it's just like you're going to a meditative space, right? Versus painting the Artemisia Gentileschi painting, like you got to be like locked in and super focused, and not everybody has the time to do that or the attention span to do that, right? Which I'm sure some of you are like, oh, you know, this is the painting I thought I wanted to make, but now I'm doing it, I'm like, this isn't fun at all. So versus other people who are like, abstract painting, it's, you know, not for me, and I want to do this hyper realistic thing. I've got like a really good attention span. So my goodness, I am like the slowest possible. Okay, should be able to. Well, maybe we'll get close to my goal here of reaching almost every painting that you guys have sent in. Okay, so now Thomas Kincaid. I thought this was like, you know what's been, I've found personally this class has been, you know, I think I've mentioned before a few times, it's been a really positive experience for me, beyond seeing all of your work and this experience we're having right now and the chats, and then the wonderful generous donations I've received from so many of you. All of that is fantastic. But just for my own personal, selfish exploration of art and different artists, it has been really, I found it like very empowering, being able to, you know, walk a little bit in somebody else's shoes and being like, oh yeah, I can do this. You know, and there's like Thomas Kincaid was an artist that I've never tried to paint in this particular kind of style, or the Bob Ross. I've never tried painting in Bob Ross's style, and exploring those things, just like many of you who are painting all of these styles for the first time, is a little bit scary, but ultimately, you know, the world didn't explode. I'm still alive, and I come out of it maybe with a few cuts and scrapes, but afterwards being like, oh, whew, okay, actually, you know, I'm doing a pretty good job. Okay, so and I have found that, you know, what I think is really surprising is, like, when we think of like Bob Ross particularly is like an artist that is, who's making these paintings, dashing them off, and anybody can do them. You know, I've been painting professionally for 20 years, and that might have been the most difficult painting for me to do, right? And same thing with like the Thomas Kincaid. It was a little bit trickier kind of, but I also found it like a really enriching, again, empowering experience, because you get to the end and you're like, huh, yeah, I can do that. I can figure this out. And what I really hope is many of you had that same feeling and experience after having completed, because as we're just looking here, and we've got how many, another 10 here to look at, you guys pulled it off big time. So here's Dolores's version of the painting. This is interesting. I imagine this maybe is because you had a larger canvas and the paper, you weren't able, you couldn't transfer the whole page onto the canvas. So we have all this extra space on the ends. That's interesting the way you framed it like that. My instinct would have been to maybe put it right in the middle and then just expand, you know, put some more trees on the side, carry the sidewalk further down. So I don't know if there's a plan to cut the canvas, or if this is a canvas board or whatever. I mean, that would be my suggestion, is to try to expand the picture here, because obviously you can do a great job painting all of this. This tree back there, gorgeous. Look at all of this. Really beautiful painting. I love, like, this great reflection. Wow, we're starting really strong here, Dolores. Great job. Oh, and this is, I think this is the close in cropped version. Cool. Great snowman. Okay, and then we've got Here's May's version of the painting. Wow, this one, I have this painting right here, the way it's been painted feels like there's like it feels like there's like a snowstorm and I'm freezing cold, and this is like the house that I see kind of like a mirage, you know, like a puddle of water in the middle of the Sahara Desert, right? This feels very kind of welcoming, this glowing house in the middle, because the here, unlike, let's say, Dolores is where we see more of the sky, May's here, the sky is sort of hidden, so we're more enclosed, right? The snowy trees feel like we're more on top of us. So, you know, different painting entirely, right? Really cool. Great job. You know, painting this house, like this is, I don't think we've really done any architecture. This might be the only one where we've done a house or a building, and it's tricky, right? It's not easy to do. Next time you see somebody who's painted something like that, you're like, oh, I got a lot of respect for the amount of attention that takes. Here's Peter's version. Very cool. That's really nice. This trellis is really well done. I like the shadows coming off of it. Beautiful. This very nice orange color. Like you really feel that. It's almost like this house is on fire. It's got so much warmth radiating out of it. Yeah, the only thing I would say is that the steps down here, I think these lines should all be parallel. See how they're kind of coming up and rotating? That creates a slight bit of confusion. Not a big deal, but I would expect probably this line to be a little bit more horizontal to the bottom of the canvas. And it might benefit with a couple little branches in these trees, the same way that it's like Dolores, like these little hints of the tree in there I think would work really well. Because otherwise it looks a little bit more like mountains in the background, which again is not a problem. You know, but just because I think most of you, if you hang these in your houses, you're not going to be, the originals are going to be nowhere near, and so it doesn't have to replicate the original exactly. Wow, look at Charmaine. Great job. Really nice. Really cool. I mean, they're so different, but they each have their own qualities that make them super special. Beautiful. I don't have much to say. I mean, I love these reflections down here. It feels very inviting and nice and warm. A little smoke coming out of the chimney. Looks great. I also, this color, this kind of peachy color inside, is nice warmth, is fantastic. Great job, Charmaine. Well done. Wow, and Sharon, look at that. Okay, so I've got two. What's the difference between these here? I think they're the same, just a little close zoomed in. Okay. Oh, you know what I was going to say? I noticed, Sharon, you often upload these with like the 3D effect, which is fantastic. It's a fun effect. It does make it a little bit trickier to extract the photo from the Facebook page with that 3D effect, because every time I do it, this little cursor, the mouse thing, pops up. So that might have been why I kind of struggled with that one, a little closely cropped. But if we just ignore that down there, this shadow is actually really nice. I like this cool shadow on this other tree, which almost makes me want to see more of that in there, kind of maybe in behind this house. Very cool. This pathway, I think, could use a little bit more white to make it a little bit more distinct, because we have this nice path, and it kind of, there's a little ambiguity as to what's happening right there. Otherwise, it's fantastic. It's nice to see this, a little bit of the sky poking through there. The house, I think, is the most effective part of here. Really get these different planes and surfaces. Really nice. Oh, and there's Sharon holding the painting. That's great. I like it. It's nice to see you guys in your paintings, because some of them are everybody knows what I look like now, but I don't really know who many of you guys are. If you maybe it already has happened a few times. You've seen me at the grocery store and you're like, oh, that's, and then like, oh, but he doesn't know who I am. So you guys could all be anonymous, and I have no idea what's going on here. Okay, so here's Shelley's version of the painting. Very cool. Wow, it's so interesting how different they are, right? Different approach. Really nice, like, depth. There's so many colors that you've managed to, like, squeeze into. Like, for instance, this area is some gorgeous color, right? We've got purples and greens and pinks and, like, in here, beautiful, right? And often that's just the layering of paint, right? And sometimes it happens when we're frustrated. We're just painting something out, and it's not working. We paint it out and try it again. And then sometimes when you nail that part, then other parts that haven't had quite as much attention, now they look a little bit flimsy. You're like, oh, got this like super cool effect right here. And now like, oh, everything else looks a little flat. Not that this does, but you know what I mean? Like sometimes you rescue a part of the painting that you were struggling with so much that now it's by far the strongest part of the painting, which is, you know, it's a great problem to have, right? Is a part of the painting is just so much better than everything else. Yeah, but particularly this part of the painting is super awesome. Great job, Shelley. And this shadow, I love this, the purple in the shadow. Often, like a great idea when you're painting is to use the opposite color in a shadow. And I think I mentioned this before, but let's say you're painting a red apple, is to put like green in the shadow or a blue in the shadow, versus let's say you're painting a blueberry, which is blue, is to then put red in the shadow or yellow in the shadow, so that orange in the shadow, so that they're contrasting colors. And it's all, and this is not just like inventing, it's like often those things are there if you look at them carefully enough, right? Just because of the way that light works. Really great. Okay, Anya Lisa. Wow, look at that. This reminds me of like Calgary because of where I grew up, where when the snow starts melting, everything underneath it is yellow, and you know, because everything under the grass is dead, right? Which is not surprising, but and then it takes all the way until the end of summer for everything to turn green, just in time for it to go yellow again. But anybody who spent any time in Calgary, like sometimes the winters can be very brown, right? As opposed to Edmonton, just further north, is this is a whole story I want to get into. But one thing I found is in Edmonton, things are, in the summer, everything is super green, because when winter hits, it is winter from October all the way until like May, and it's just solid winter. Whereas Calgary, it's like winter, like, and then it's in the middle of January, December, it's like people walking around in flip-flops and t-shirts, and then winter, and then so the grass and the leaves are just like, I don't know what to do. Is it summer yet? And so everything just dies because they get killed off, right? Whereas in Edmonton, everything, once the winter hits, all the plants are like, okay, I'm going to Florida. I'll see you guys in May, right? So anyway, long story, crazy tangent. Beautiful. Again, there's like all these kind of warm colors here. Like this kind of feels in this painting like it is fall and the first snow is just happening, right? And also not only that, but the sun is setting, right? Because we got this nice, just that glowing golden hour look is really effective here. Great job. And you know, just like these real quick swirls of gray in the sky to create those trees works really well. Way to go, Vanya. And let's take a quick look through this here and see if there's any Thomas Kincaid paintings that, where was that? Wow, look at some of these. What is this? Sharon, oh, that is cool. I like that. I love the foot tracks going around there. This feels like, I love the way you captured the snow there. That's great. That is a really nice painting. And I love the warmth coming from inside of this kind of cabin. Really nice. Looks like this person is like either on their way to like, they're like, oh, I can't wait to get home. I want to go in there. Oh, here's our you know, these just so many paintings. Let's see. We talked about Dolores's. Is that one I just clicked on? Talked about Shelley's. Ooh. Oh, Gale's. Okay, so this is one we haven't seen. In fact, I'm just going to drag it right into my folder before I forget. Wow. Oops, I guess that's, you can't see that there. So let's do this. Ooh, very different. Like this feels more like this. There's like a little bit of a hill here, and then some trees on the other, you know, down the hill. Much darker down there. Interesting. Huh. You know, all of these are different paintings. You guys make different decisions. Sometimes decisions you make out of necessity or because you're not happy with certain things. It changes the painting in slightly different ways. I think it's really, really cool. Actually, I wonder, like this, yeah, it does feel like maybe there is this kind of dark forest in behind here, but we have this kind of really nice warm house kind of at the edge of maybe a little bit of a foreboding forest there. So like almost like this is the eye of the storm, kind of the safe shelter amongst all of this chaos that's happening around it. Really cool. Great job. And I like this, the warmth coming from inside here is nice. Beautiful. Way to go, Gale. Okay, let's see, did I miss anybody else? Any other Thomas Kincaids here? Oh, see how Iris, did we talk about yours, Iris? I didn't. Okay, so let's drag this one in here. See, I love the comments that you guys give one another, like Gail saying, oh, the sidewalk looks really icy. Wow, that is great. Beautiful. Yeah, it does look really icy. You got to be really careful. We should put some salt on the sidewalk here, Iris, or somebody's going to get hurt. This is great. I love it. Beautiful. Look, Christmas tree lights on there. And this tree missing all of its leaves. Really nice. Wow. We certainly have a very talented group of artists in this class. Okay. Let's push on. You know what? 538. You know what I want to do? Okay, so I didn't quite get as far as I wanted. We got to Kincaid, so I'll have to do another episode of this, and I'll be more organized again. I think what I want to do is show artwork that you guys have made outside of the class, inspired by, you know, your own interests. And the first thing that pops up here, this is Deborah's granddaughter, Morgane, and this is age 5, and a drawing that she made, and then Deborah's used Mod Podge to seal the painting, which is, you know, a great way to preserve the painting. It's a great way to transfer it onto another surface, especially, you know, paper. You know, sometimes little kids' drawings are just on cheap pieces of photocopy paper, but they're really, really nice. And how do you display it? I mean, you could frame it, obviously, but sometimes just putting it on a canvas board like this, you know, then you can prop it up on a shelf. Works really well. Really nice. It's great once you start learning some of these techniques and being able to share them with your family. And this is another one, Deborah's grandson. Did I get the right name? Fabian? Age 8 here. Look at that castle. Way to go. You got some talented kids in the family there, Deborah. This carcass that's been chewed down to the bone here. Very imaginative. Oh, I love the bats flying from far away, and how this castle's got a kind of a skull as part of a turret. Very cool. And then here's another artwork sent in by another viewer, and they're another child who's been, you know, inspired by the class. And this is, I think, based on one of the paintings. This is from the previous series of acrylic classes that I taught back about 4 years ago. And if you're interested, you could find it on my YouTube page, which you're watching me on right now. And you can. It's like a 8-minute or video, 10-minute video, like sped up, where I teach people how to do the sunflowers painting. And I also do one. There's like 5 episodes in that series. Very cool. So this is, I wonder how old your son was, Adriana Gabriel. Great painting, regardless of whatever age it is. I'm sure there's some people watching right now and be like, wow, that's your kid. I'd like to make a painting like that. Here's a painting Gail did. Wow, cool, Gail. These very delicately balanced coffee cups. This is like if you go to a coffee shop and they haven't changed the you know, you have to bus your own table, and you're like, oh, I don't know, keep stacking dishes in there. This is going to be a disaster. Really well done. Especially, you know, like some of these where we've got the highlights on here, like this red cup, I think it might be the most effective of all of them, because I really feel this handle coming towards us. And that's a result of it being probably one of the brightest parts on this entire painting. I think it's even a little bit brighter than any of the whites on the lighter cups too, right? So that really pops and makes it come forward. Well done. What I would say is it looks like it's balanced on a table, and the table, underneath the table, I think if we added just a little bit more contrast under here, it might create more of the effect that they're sitting on something. So we've got the black that you've mixed into here. I would even consider putting a little bit more of that darker shadow onto the here, and then darkening these table legs much more. And but really trying to, so what you've done a great job with these shadows. I would keep these shadows here and darkening the shadows and the entire legs all together as well. Works really well. Cool, great job, Gail. Here's another one by Gail. Look at this nice sunset in the desert. And the cactus that's silhouetted, but not entirely. We got a little bit of this warmth on the front that we just barely see. Really nice touch. That's a really nice touch. Oh, I just jumped here. Yeah, I'm really pleased with how this turned out. I wonder when, I mean, I'm sure you probably wrote it in your post, but one thing you could probably add, if you were interested, is if you did this with a little bit more like slow dry medium, you could really get these colors to blend in the sky if you wanted. Right now it's a little bit more on the Van Gogh spectrum, where we see a bit more stylized version of the painted sky. I think that's really nice. And then these little pops of color down here, I think that works well too. I think actually this could be toned down even more. I think you'd almost put a little of a darker wash on that and then you'd be fine. Great painting. And then here's, this is Gemini Niels again. Wow. So based on a different Lauren Harris painting, really effective, like beautiful modeling of these, of the snow on here, just like he did. Great job. That's a really nice painting. Well done. What would be, I mean, what would be really fun is if you're really into Lauren Harris, is to start taking some of his paintings or his style and applying them to original paintings of your own, which is something that we're going to be talking about in the next few classes. So this coming week is our final week of this original acrylic painting course, and then starting the week after, I'm going to be teaching or leading, maybe less teaching and more just leading, 2 kind of new classes. So, and I haven't, my wife has helped me create the Facebook pages for them, but I haven't created any imagery. I've written a little bit of text on them. But one of them, the one that's going to be on Tuesday, is basically doing exactly what we're doing right now, just continuing forward. But mostly, I'm calling it a master study. So we'll be really just looking at artists like we've done here and reproducing one of their paintings. But I feel like, so by the end of this course, you guys have learned all of the most important skills and techniques and strategies to make virtually any painting out there. Obviously, there's tons of things that we can learn forever. But for a beginner painter, like by the time you guys are done this, you're more, you have more skills and in terms of technique and approach to painting than most of my students at Emily Carr, the university art school I teach at. So you're set. So the next part of the course is we're just like, I'm just going to be taking artists from art history and just reproducing paintings as we've done here, but less as like an intent to teach somebody a technique, because so far I've been sometimes doing things maybe a little bit different than the original artist did, so that I can emphasize a particular kind of skill or strategy. In the next session, it's just going to be, okay, let's paint this Lauren Harris painting. Boom, let's go into it without kind of saying, okay, well, you need to know this little thing, and we're going to apply that to this and that forward. If that makes any sense whatsoever. And then on Thursday, we're going to be making original paintings from scratch based on things that are happening in the news at the time. So, and trying to avoid as much of politics as possible. But let's say if we were to take something out of the news like this past couple of weeks, let's say it would be Biden's inauguration. Now, I probably wouldn't make a painting of Joe Biden, but I might focus in on something interesting that happened during that ceremony. Maybe it was there was that young woman who read a poem. She's like the poet laureate or the youth poet laureate. So maybe we could make a painting of her, or of a really cool like sunset that was happening, or a still life that was in the background. So taking something from an event like that and then making a painting based on it. And I'm going to rely on people on the Tuesday class to help make suggestions as to what our Thursday painting will be. And then on that Thursday painting, I'll invite you guys to, like, I'll start with, I'll make a drawing that will be uploaded onto the Dropbox, which you can download and print out and start in the same place. And if you want to paint along exactly what I do, or you want to do something totally different using that same beginning place, and then we're going to have like a wild collection of very different paintings at the very end. So the class will sort of split off into two slightly different classes, so that if you want to continue painting on Tuesdays and Thursdays with me, you're certainly welcome to do that. If you just want to do the Tuesday classes, then you'll have your fix. If you're looking to apply some of the things we've been doing towards creating more original artwork of your own, then our Thursday class is kind of more like what we've been looking at for the past 10 minutes, is how you can take some of these things and apply them towards your own individual interests. So this is Medi's drawing. I thought I'd just include it because she did write me a really, really nice complimentary email talking about some of the things that she learned in her drawing class, which I was teaching in person last year, or I guess 2 years ago, however long we've been in quarantine. And a really beautiful drawing. So if you're interested in learning a little bit about drawing, you could, just like she did, do that course here. Now here's some of these things by Molly. So she just posted this a few days ago, and I thought this was super interesting. So what she was talking about doing here is, at the end, if I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, Molly, what you were doing was taking, at the very end of every session, if you had extra paint, just sort of brushing it on some of the thick paper that we used for the Banksy piece, for the stencil. And so you just had all these leftover swatches of paint, and you decided to start cutting them out and turn them into a collage. And I think you used, if I recall, it was like the gloss medium you used the gloss medium as an adhesive, which, oh, what am I doing? I'm showing the, I'm not even showing you guys. Okay, so let's back up a second. So here's a drawing that Medi, yeah, thanks, Don. We can't see them. So here's this drawing that Medi sent here of her cat that she drew, which I think is, again, super fantastic drawing. And then let's look here at Molly's the bird. So here's the scraps from painting on this thick pieces of stencil, or not super thick. It's like the Bristol board, poster paper, and she cut out and then collaged them onto another surface using the gloss medium, which works actually surprisingly well. That's something eventually when I redo the Murakami episode that I've learned, is I actually think that the gloss and matte medium in many instances were more effective than Mod Podge for gluing things down and for photo transfer. But we'll talk about that as we go here. So if you already have some of that medium, you'd be surprised at how well it works in a number of other scenarios. Although Mod Podge also works better than those mediums in other scenarios, but that's, again, a conversation for something else. But what is really inspiring about this is you're sort of recycling this kind of throwaway material, just these little splotches of paint. Maybe you're just getting rid of paint on your brush, and you're reusing it in this instance. This is a lot like how Matisse made some of his most famous collages. So if we just take a quick little step here to you may have seen some of these images before. Let me see if there's photos. So towards the end of Henri Matisse's life, he was mostly confined to his bed. And while he was in his bed, he, so here we have, you can see him here. He's got an assistant who's painting these big sheets of paper. So he's not using colored paper, he's using pieces of paper that have been painted with color, which is an interesting distinction, right? Because it would certainly be a lot easier to use colored paper, but he wanted to have more control over the exact colors. And I think he liked seeing the little bit of the painterly texture on there. So he would get his assistant to paint all of these sheets of paper, and then he would use his scissors to start trimming and cutting shapes out, of which you could see in behind, and then they would pin them up onto the walls and behind. So here's another, I love this photo. I actually have this photo up on the, oh, right here. Right, just kind of as inspiration. So one, just out of a total side note, one thing I do is sometimes I'll take pictures like this off the internet, and I just go and print them at, put them on a USB stick, print them, put them in a frame, and it looks gorgeous. And I can have these things around in my studio as inspiration. So whether it's an artist that you admire, or a celebrity, or a family member, put it in print it out, put it in a frame, celebrate the people that you admire and appreciate, right? Anyway, so long story short, great job, Molly. These look really great. Molly says the paint is on thinner paper cut and collaged on thick paper. Oh, with the gloss medium. Okay. So maybe just like, I don't know if it's photocopy paper or such, but probably I would, to get some of these really sharp details, it would be easier on thinner paper. We're trying to cut with like really heavy paper like that. It would be a real bit of a pain. Great job. Okay, how many more do we have? Whoa. Okay, so I'm gonna finish this session by talking about the next like sort of 15 or so paintings that you guys have created on your own, and then I've already scheduled another one of these for a couple of weeks from now. I might even do another one next Saturday too, just because there's the volume of incredible work that you guys have created is like outstanding. So here's a painting by Peter. He called it a dripping R2-D2 from Star Wars. Very cool. This is great. I love the splatter here. I just think it's so exciting. The more and more that you learn this language of painting, the more then you can really start expressing yourself and your own interests and ideas. And this is just super cool. So instead of being surrounded by artists that I like and paintings that you've made based from our classes, then you start surrounding yourself with artists that you like and your own versions of these. Like, this is fantastic. Even just like this little reflection on here, gives it this volume, gives it, that illusion of 3 dimensions. And the drips look really cool. And then here's Boba Fett that Peter's painting. Here's the first one. And then here's starting, and then I think this is the final one where now he's been, if you've seen The Mandalorian, that new TV show on Disney, the Star Wars television series, right? This is what this is based on. Very cool. Like nice simple sketch. Start painting on it. Very cool. I love the drips. And then I think Peter is also talking about he wants to make the same painting on all these different sized canvases. I can't wait to see this same photograph once again on all those different canvases. And then here's this. I also found this really interesting, Peter. Here's photo number 1 of this set of shelves, all your video games. And you're like, why are we looking at this? It's because Peter's been selling all of this equipment and has since replaced all of those old video games with paintings that he's made in this class, which I think is super cool, right? There's nothing wrong with video games. I used to play video games all the time when I was growing up. But for me to see somebody, I mean, you had this really cool collection. I remember I had all these Game Boys. I used to have that Power Glove and Super Nintendo and all that kind of stuff. And it's really cool that, like, as we get older, our interests change a little bit. And you've probably made a fortune selling all those old video games, those collector's items. And this is how what you've decided as you're growing older that you want to surround yourself with all this art that you created, rather than all these products that other people created, right? So instead of being, a consumer of products by other people, you're a producer of artwork, of original material, right? So I can't wait to see a third photograph of this maybe a couple of years from now, where instead of all the paintings that we made, maybe they're stacked up right here. It's a whole bunch of paintings that you've made, Peter. That would be super cool. And then here you've made a painting. At first I thought this was a video game box, and then I realized you actually painted this. Really cool, right? I just think it's, even if it's painting, you have, like, I'm a person who likes, clearly, I've got a whole bunch of junk everywhere. But, if you were to make a painting, let's say you've got, like I've got boxes of, like, little trinkets that I've collected, and I find it hard to get rid of. But this would be a really great way of making a painting of a trinket or a gift that somebody bought for you that is sort of taking up a bunch of space, but you don't know what to do with it. Like, if you were to make a painting of that thing that somebody gave you, but you don't know what to do with it, and you made a painting of it and then sold that thing, I would think most people would not be offended or upset with that. Like, if I gave somebody, I don't know, a t-shirt, or I go on vacation and I bought a little Eiffel Tower thing, you get it at a gift shop, and I was to give that to somebody, and they were like, oh, this is awesome. And then I found out later that they made this really cool painting from it, and then they threw out the thing that I got them, or they sold it or gave it away. I would be actually not even not offended. I would be really excited, because I was like, wow, that's super cool. I inspired somebody to make some artwork out of this little gift. So if you're thinking about clearing out some of your material from your house and making a little bit of room, but you're conflicted as to what to do with all of that material or those things, especially things that people have given you, and it's hard to get rid of things, gifts, right, is to make a painting of it as to honor that moment. And now that painting is really thin, and it can be stacked on a shelf very easily, or it can be displayed. And then if I was to come, if let's say I had given this to Peter and he got rid of the game but had that on his wall, I'd be like, wow, that's really cool. Now you can see it all the time. I'd feel more honored with that. Okay, so we've got 4 more paintings before we call it a day here. Here is Charmai's version of a David Hockney painting. So David Hockney, who did the dog painting, the 2 sleeping dogs. This was a kind of, I don't know if this is based exactly on one of his paintings, or you've been inspired and created your own thing. But this is very typical of his work from the kind of mid-'80s. Beautiful, especially this layering of blues and reds on this pink up here. You've nailed that. And this kind of glowing yellow underneath. Very, very effective. I can't remember if it was you, Charmai, that did a Hockney before as well. So I love seeing when you guys start making these versions of famous paintings and you're on your own without my guidance, and you're nailing them and pulling them off. That, again, that for me is the highest compliment you could possibly pay me. I'm just going to take it as a compliment, even if you had no intent, just because it feels like, wow, it's like I've taught somebody how to fish, and then they go out and catch a really big fish. It's like, yes, that's the whole point, right? That's the whole my goal as a teacher is if I can teach somebody to do something, and then they go off and do it, then like what else could I possibly ask for? So here's another painting by Charmé of this Matisse. Very cool. So this is a famous Matisse painting. I think it's called The Red Room, if I recall. And I think it's a different, well, he did a number of paintings of the Red Room. There's a few of them. But this is a really well done. I like it. Looks, I don't know if there was an undercolor there or not. It might be just blue and then red next to it. But really nice, sharp painting. Well done. And I mean, I love the contrast between blue and red. It's electric. You almost have to be careful at times because it can be so overpowering that as something to look at, you know, people are like, oh, I can't, it makes my eyes sore, right? But what's one of the genius of Matisse is using that strong color combination and making it work. Here's a painting of Roses by Sharon, which is really cool. Clearly kind of using some of the strategies we used when we painted the Morisot painting of the vase of flowers, and that worked really, really well. Beautiful. I like them on this dark blue background too. It really makes them pop, and I like this kind of the green leaves, which are kind of fade a little bit away because in terms of flowers, they're probably not the most, they can't compete to the petals of the flowers. But they're there. They haven't been disappeared, but they're just muted. I think that worked out really well. And then this is really interesting so this is Shelley's painting of her grandchildren. I think if I recall, it's two photos that have been kind of blended together, and it's and here's a tree. This is a tree on this side. They're kind of like walking up a hill, I think. And then we have them here. So it is funny. Like this is like almost like a surrealist painting because we would expect these figures, if this was one scene, we would expect these figures to be much bigger than these two off in the horizon, like so that they would be small and then these are approaching us. But you've kind of flipped things, so these guys are closer to us than them. So there's an odd space thing happening here where it's strange for sure, but I think it's also like really neat, right? It's like, I think it might be, it's slightly confusing, but I don't mind that in art. I wrote my entire graduate thesis on the idea of mystery and why that's really, that is the defining characteristic of great art, is that there's always something about it that is slightly weird or off, and it causes us to, you know, like if you're walking through a museum, you're like, oh yeah, interesting, and then you're like, wait, what? What's going on with that? That's weird. And then you're like, whatever. And then those are the paintings that later on you're sitting at the coffee shop or you're in your dream circle, and you're like, what was that weird thing going on here, right? Or what is going on with these two people? Like, how does this space make sense? Like it's when you first see it, you're like, oh, okay, it's interesting. And then you're like, whoa, wait. So I love it. I think that's really cool. I think that's really fun. And then here, I think this we'll end on here. This is not a painting, it's a drawing, but I think it's, this is a drawing that Shelley made for a friend of their dog. And it's in a frame, and then it's been gifted to that friend. And I think this, even though again it's not a painting, but it's still a creative artwork, a piece that she made, and the idea of giving this to a friend is like is so beautiful, and I'm sure they just loved it and appreciated it. Especially as animals get older and older and eventually, unfortunately, pass away, having things like this, even this photograph of that, like what I have done in the past is taken a photograph of a person with an artwork and then just printed that out and put it in behind the canvas. You know, you can either glue it or just kind of put it in there with the frame, and it's kind of a fun little thing to later on like look at it and be like, oh, here's the two of them side by side. It also helps authenticate the artwork itself if that's a problem later on. In fact, let me just what's the name of this book? Okay, this, yeah, Lewis Hyde. This is a great book. If anyone's interested in this book, was, I think, kind of transformative for me because he talks about, I think the book is like from the 40s or something. It's an older book, or 25th anniversary, just so it's probably like the 70s, a little bit different, different time period. But either way, the kind of the thesis of this book is that all art is a gift, right? When we create art, we're giving a gift to the world and also to ourselves, right? I'm sure those of you that have made some of the paintings in this class, whether it's just one or it's all 40, right? I'm sure it's made a difference in your life in terms of like your self-confidence and your kind of your outlook on things, and then being able to share that with your family members. You have those paintings around, your family start to look at you differently and appreciate you differently. And the more that we're producing art like this, I think it also makes the world a better place. Now, there's a lot more stuff in that book there to think and talk about, but if you're looking for a great book, it's called Creativity and the Artist in the Modern World. It's so much so that when my students at the art school, Emily Carr, when we talk about each other's artwork, I always talk about the person presenting their artwork as someone presenting us with a gift, right? And I talk about the people that are the viewers as receivers of a gift. And just like if somebody gives you a gift, right, you're like, oh wow, like it's you want your attention to be there, and you want to be watching and paying attention and offering feedback, etc. So anyway, great book, great group of artwork that you guys have created and sent in. I certainly didn't get as far in as I wanted, but that just means we're going to have to do another one of these and look at more and more artwork. So if you haven't had a chance to finish some of the other paintings off, there's still plenty of time. We'll do at least 2 more of these sessions to round out this entire course. So, whew. Thank you everybody for joining me here on a Saturday night and for celebrating the artwork by people like yourself. Maybe you were one of the persons that made some of the artwork and we talked about your work here. So, you know, I'm really super touched and honored that over the past 4 months that you guys have stuck with me and continued making artwork. And, you know, boy, oh boy, I hope that, you know, 20 years from now, when I've got a lot more gray in my hair and you guys are off doing really interesting things, that you guys keep in touch and send me occasional updates, and who knows how long our Facebook page will be around for, that it continues to get overflowing with people who are expressing themselves in such a positive way. Okay, everybody. Well, I hope you have a good rest of your weekend. In a few days, we are going to be talking about the work of Helen Frankenthaler, one of the great painters of the last century, one of the great abstract painters of all time, and arguably one of the persons that began the whole paint pouring phenomenon. She did a little bit of a twist on it that she had. We'll talk about all that, but I'm really excited for that class because paint pouring is like a huge deal these days in terms of like art making. And let's go right to the source and let's find the person that did it and did it best. So we'll see you on Tuesday. Enjoy yourself until then. Wherever you are on planet Earth, thanks for visiting my studio. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye, everybody.